When I was researching for both The Poet Slave of Cuba and The Surrender Tree, I was reading everything I could find about 19th century Cuba. I just wanted every detail of daily life. I wanted diaries where people not only tell you what they ate for breakfast, but they tell you what their emotions were during their daily lives. And it's something that you don't find in history books written later. You have to actually go back to the first person accounts written at that time. Well, I kept coming across the references to the letters and diaries of Fredrika Bremer, a Swedish suffragette, a Swedish women's rights activist who was also a travel writer. She had traveled and written about the daily lives of women in Scandinavia, and then she set sail for the Americas, and she traveled in North America and then went to Cuba in 1851, and she wrote letters back to European royalty and diaries, extremely detailed diaries about her experiences in Cuba. She explored the countryside and wrote about slavery in a way that Cubans at the time were not doing, partly because of censorship. It was illegal for Cubans to write about slavery. But she was an outsider. She was Swedish and had her freedom to write as an outsider, and she chose to use that freedom to tell about what she was seeing. She kind of served as a witness, and I'm very grateful that her diaries were published in English at the time, as well as in Swedish, so that I was able to read them. Some were also published in Spanish, but if all of that writing had only been in Swedish, I never would have known anything about it. But by being able to find English and Spanish copies of her letters and diaries, I was really able to appreciate her friendship with a young African-born slave girl who was assigned to be her translator while she was in Cuba. The Swedish consulate found her a place to stay out in the countryside. She wanted to see how ordinary people lived. She didn't want to be with all the wealthy people in their palaces in the city, which probably shocked them because they would have assumed that anybody would want to learn about their daily lives rather than those of the slaves and the poor people. But her translator, Cecilia, really fascinated me. She was very young, not sure if she was a teenager. She was just referred to as a very young woman, and she was pregnant, and she was sick. She had what sounded like tuberculosis, but she wandered around the countryside with Fredrika Bremer, translating because she had been taught English in order to serve as a translator in the sugar mills, translating between African languages, Spanish and English, which was spoken by the American engineers in the sugar mills. And Fredrika Bremer spoke English, but not Spanish. So Cecilia's role was to help her with whatever she wanted to do, and what she wanted to do was interview slaves and free blacks as she wandered around the countryside.